Good evening, everybody. Today's video is going to talk about the Honeycomb Aeronautical Bravo Throttle Quadrant. Now, I know I've done other videos about the Bravo, but this is a follow-up video after 2 years of use. I can't believe it's already been 2 years that I have had this product. But today's video, we're going to talk about the Honeycomb Aeronautical Bravo Throttle Quadrant after 2 years of ownership. This video is really going to focus in on what you can expect if you are going to go out and buy a Bravo right now, or if you're going to purchase one for somebody in your life and use it or give it to them as gifting for the purpose of flight training or flight simulation or anything in between that it could be used for. So this video is going to follow the same template that I've already used in several other review videos and one follow-up for the Alpha Yoke. If you haven't seen that video yet, you can check my channel out. And the template goes as this. My laptop's right down here, so I'm using that as a way to keep me on track. If you've seen some of my other videos in the past, I can drone on and on. I'm doing better, I hopefully hope so, to cut down on time. So we're going to go with overall impression, design, durability, functionality, value, and my final thoughts on the product. Now, overall, the Bravo, if you are looking at getting this and you're comparing it to a lot of other products out there, this is really the standout product for anything GA, commercial, even some space simulation, depending on how you're going to use it, how you're going to set it up. You really can't find anything else that ties in so much functionality and usability into one single product. So I know this is kind of final thoughts early, but if this is something you're really considering and it's not going to break your budget, I would say the Bravo is really the best throttle quadrant out there. So with that said, you can go ahead and click on another video, go make some popcorn, relax. I saved yourself probably another 10 minutes of me talking, but if you want to hear why, keep coming along with me. So overall impression about the Bravo Throttle Quadrant. From the second you start unboxing your Bravo Throttle Quadrant, taking it out of the box, unpacking from all the materials, it's well taken care of, and it's well thought out. This is something that was designed by somebody that's a pilot and other people that are interested in aviation. And I think probably more than one pilot took time looking at the design cue of this and making sure that it followed the cues that you would want if you're actually a pilot out there and you're trying to contemplate, how can I pack in as much functionality onto one device? And the Bravo fits that in. The overall impression when you take it out, yeah, it's made of plastic, but regardless of that fact, you have so much functionality and capability. You have 6 different axes to tie in. You have a trim wheel, given there's some issues about the trim wheel that I'm going to talk about here shortly. You have a tensioner on the other side to at least try to tie in the tension for the axes, so your throttle, your prop, mixture, all those things along the lines, to get it exactly the way you really want it to fly, similar to what you might fly in real life or what you might be expecting if you're a simmer and you're reading online about how certain aircraft characteristics are, how the overall mechanics of a throttle would work with that aircraft, so on and so forth. The impression that you get when you take this out of the box is it's a stand-up product. It's something that you should get years and years of use out of and you will be happy with, because from the first design cue of just looking at the fact that you have a commercial and GA set of pieces to put on for all the axes, so covering your throttle, your manifold pressure, your mixture, your flaps, your spoilers, your throttle settings, just basic for going for a jetliner or some kind of aircraft that is more of a commercial side aircraft. You have a lot of functionality here that really hands off really nicely for Microsoft Flight Sim 2020, X-Plane 11, X-Plane 12, Lockheed Martin Prepare 3D, and then all the other things that are coming out soon, especially with that Lockheed Martin tying in with Unreal Engine. There's a lot of stuff that the Bravo is going to fit in nicely with, that as long as you're understanding how to assign it outside of the already pre-baked profiles in Microsoft Flight Sim 2020 and X-Plane 11, X-Plane 12, you'll be able to fine-tune this product to give you that perfect or as near perfect flight sim experience that you're looking for whatever purpose, whether it's simming or flight training itself. So overall impression, you take it out of the box, you look at the care that went into this design cues, and you start flipping switches, pressing buttons. It's a solid product. Now, design. Design is where I feel like the Bravo Throttle Quadrant really steps away from a lot of other throttle quadrants and other products out there on the market that you can purchase right now. Behind me, and they're kind of blurred out because of my lens, I have the old SciTech TPM, the the push-pull module that they have to mimic the Cessna Throttle Quadrant, and then I also have the old Logitech, now old SciTech, now Logitech Throttle Quadrants, the really simple ones back in the middle, and then over there you got the Bravo. I'm going to throw those up here underneath on the screen as well, because it's kind of useless trying to show something that's out of view in the back. But the overall design of the Bravo is taken apart multiple years and products of looking at how can you do something better, whether these people were training, whether you're doing some focus group testing or you're talking to pilots. And you can see all these different things. Like if you look back and you look at the CH product, Throttle Quadrant, it did a lot, and it does a lot still, but it still has a lot of things lacking that you still have to put more onto, build onto, and then create this whole system around it. Whereas the Bravo Throttle Quadrant really ties in a lot. You've got your landing gear lever or lever, depending on where you are in the world, how you want to say that. You have your trim wheel, you have your tensionometer, or tensioner. You have all these axes. You have a flap switch, so you can use another axis for something else, depending on what you're doing. You have your autopilot panel, and given the autopilot panel is not perfect. It has some issues when it comes into the integration with Microsoft Flight Sim 2020 and even with X-Plane 12. If you don't know the phrases or the terminology that, say, Microsoft Flight Sim 2020 is using for a certain specific setting within an autopilot. So if you're a Garmin pilot or you're a GA pilot and you fly Garmin avionics, there are some things that you need to look into to see how they're tied into with Microsoft Flight Sim 2020 versus X-Plane 12. And there are some very in-depth videos about that here on YouTube and other write-ups about exactly which phrase means what when you're trying to tie these in. So I recommend looking for those. But when you look at the design and you have this autopilot panel, you have the switches, you have everything that comes together, even the annunciator panel here. There's a lot on this design that allows you to not have to utilize, say, the old SciTech, now Logitech, backlit information panel, the radio panel. Oh, given this does not have a radio panel, but you could get around that by programming one of these knobs to do radios for you. There's a lot you can do here on the Bravo, depending on how much you have knowledge of Microsoft Flight Sim 2020 and X-Plane 11 and 12 for assigning buttons and axes within the simulator itself. So design-wise, the Bravo takes on years of flight simming by several people behind the scenes to bring an amazing product to market that over 2 years, I'm still playing around with how I like the profile set up on it for different aircraft and different systems, whether I'm using the Bravo to try to emulate a Garmin autopilot or an old Genesis S-Tech product or anything else out there, whether it could be all the way up to a Boeing or an Airbus autopilot, and the way the functionality works with that, with flight level change and with all these different vertical speed modes, localizer capture modes, and so on and so forth. All these very in-depth methods of flying different aircraft and the way the systems are made. The Bravo gives you the ability to really get down in the nitty-gritty and assign different things in different places so you can have what you want with the Bravo and your sim experience. So design-wise, it gives you a lot. And when you compare it to all the other throttle quadrants out there made by Logitech now, or by Thrustmaster, by CH Products, and now even Turtle Beach and several other companies that are not massive companies but smaller homegrown companies that are making great overall products, they're just a little bit more expensive. The Bravo hits that sweet spot in design for having that perfect amount of combo of different niches and abilities into a product that's not too expensive but also still not cheap, but at the same time, when you look at it and the design, you feel like you're getting what you want out of it. So after 2 years, let's talk about durability. What have I seen with my Bravo after 2 years that I don't like, or maybe something's broken or something's just not right? And really the funny thing about this is I have had no issues with my Bravo Throttle Quadrant. I have not had issues with dust, and I am in a dusty environment here in my basement. I have not had any issues with my kids breaking anything. All of the parts still work. I have not found a switch, any of the autopilot buttons, the trim wheel, the gear lever, the tensionometer or the tensioner, or the flap switch. Nothing has shown any kind of issues that I have had to either reach out to Honeycomb for or to try to figure out to maybe take it apart and figure out what broke on side. The overall durability of this product has been exceptional with no issues on my side. Now, durability and functionality are two different things. So let's go from durability now into functionality. Functionality, we talked about this in design slightly, and I kind of went a little bit too far with the design and merged some functionality into that. But the ability for the functionality of the Bravo is amazing when you think about what you can do with all these buttons, all the switches, the autopilot panel, the gear lever, the flap switch, and all these axes that give you the ability to have buttons built into the axes. So with the commercial setup, you have the reversers that you can flip up and then it will actually activate a button within the axis switch itself as you're bringing it back and forth to actually activate the reversers, which is a great setup because a lot of aircraft, if you haven't flown any large aircraft all the way up, like say a Boeing or an Airbus, Embraer, a lot of them have a safety on the reverser, so you can't just put the aircraft into the reverse. You actually have to hit some button, hit a lever, and then it unlocks it and pulls it over and then back in and locks it out. That is a nice add-on for the Bravo Throttle Quadrant, where at least you have to do something to unlock reverse. Functionality of at least tying in realism is huge here with the Bravo Throttle Quadrant. Now, there are some issues with functionality that I wish that were a little bit different. Say the trim wheel. It'd be amazing if the trim wheel had been designed to have some kind of a stopper. So instead of going limitless all the way through the trim wheel itself, we're just spinning on and on and on and on and on and on. It would stop. Just like in a Skyhawk or any other aircraft, you hit a limiter and it's done. Aside from that, though, I really don't find a whole lot of issues with the functionality being a difficulty with tying into a sim. With the coding in the sim, there are a couple things that you have to worry about when it comes down to updates, profiles, and then any other third-party add-ons that might interfere with the assignments of axes or buttons. Occasionally, this will occur with tying in of external inputs with maybe other devices. You might need to go in and make sure that, say, your Bravo Throttle Quadrant is not sharing an axis with some other device. So if you're using the Bravo with maybe a Logitech Extreme 3D Pro or a, let's say, even the Alpha or Velocity Worn from Turtle Beach, sorry, because I have one over here that's coming up for review here shortly. Those all can tie in together and share certain functionalities that you would have on the Bravo. So basically you could have two different axes tied to the throttles, and you need to go in there and turn one off. Otherwise they might actually interfere with each other and create an issue with the functionality of your Bravo. This has been an issue for some people that I know that have tied up their Bravo and been trying to use it within a flight simulator, and then all of a sudden something doesn't work. I'm trying to remember one exactly was with the Garmin 430 and X-Plane 11. Somebody had plugged in their Bravo Throttle Quadrant. They were using it with a yoke. I'm trying to remember which yoke it was off the top of my head, but right now I'm blanking on it. And they were having an issue with the 430 not turning on. And it turned out they had assigned one switch on the Bravo to the power switch on the 430. So when they got in the sim, the 430 stayed dark until they finally figured out where that switch was. They flip the switch, the 430 turns on, and everything is good. So when it comes down to functionality, if you're having an issue with your Bravo not doing what you're expecting in the simulator, go into Microsoft Flight Sim 2020, X-Plane 11, X-Plane 12, Prepare 3D, and check to see where you might have multiple assignments assigned to your Bravo and some other device. That way you do not have interference while you're using it. But overall functionality of the Bravo Throttle Quadrant is great. Just know you might run into issues if you're using multiple devices that share certain assignments. So value. For $350, the value of the Bravo Throttle Quadrant is very nice. Now, or 250, yeah, 250 to 350. Let me put the actual price up here shortly. But the Bravo Throttle Quadrant, for its price point of $250, is a solid asking price for this unit. Because when you think about what else you have to tie in to a throttle quadrant from Logitech, from CH, anywhere else to get the autopilot panel on here, to get all these axes, to get a flap switch, to get a trim wheel, you're adding on multiple things that bring you up to the same price point, if not more. So why not in doing so? If you can actually have something that ties everything together, and it's a good package, it's built solidly, the value proposition of the Bravo Throttle Quadrant is very strong. Now, I know if you're somebody that's really on a tight budget, you might be a little hamstringed here, because if you're somebody that's looking at a Logitech Extreme 3D Pro or anything below $75 to start building a sim up around, this is something that you're going to add on to later. So if, say, after Christmas you've got a couple gift cards, you can put that together to get a Bravo, that would be something great. But if you're going for the complete bare bones setup, you can't buy a Bravo and then not have some way to fly the airplane. You still need a joystick, a yoke, something in the middle to actually control the airplane. So if this is something where you're on an extreme budget, is the value there? No, it's going to be more expensive and it might be outside of your price range. But if you have a larger budget, if you're somebody that's working in the $400 to maybe $500 for an overall kit, now I'm not saying computer, monitor, and everything else. I'm just saying your PC sim or flight sim peripherals, albeit a yoke, rudder pedals, and everything else. The Bravo is perfect because it ties in so much of what you would want to not have to use your mouse constantly to do all these other things. So if you're looking at that sub $500, so say you were going to go out and get a Logitech Extreme 3D Pro, the Bravo, and then say maybe the Thrustmaster rudder pedals, you should still be able to come in within a budget that is still somewhere around $400 and be very happy with the sim setup you have. If you have a larger budget, pairing the Alpha, the Bravo, and eventually when all the Charlie rudder pedals get to all their destinations, whether it's the US, UK, wherever you might live, that setup is going to be an amazing setup because you're going to have a very durable, competent setup to move forward with over the many years to come. So value-wise, it is a perfect value proposition if you are not in the budget constraints. If you're in a mid-price range tier where you can spend up to $400, $500, like I've said before, this is a perfect product. So final thoughts. What are my final takeaways aside from what I told you at the beginning of this video? You probably already clicked off. You've made it this far. Thank you very much for watching this long. But final thoughts about the Bravo Throttle Quadrant. Are there things I would change? Not really, because if I was to change anything about the Bravo Throttle Quadrant, it would probably require them to change their tooling and the way they make this product to add in a few more features, which is then raise the price point and then change the value proposition potentially. Because what I might want is going to be different from maybe what you might want. So final thoughts here, this is a great product. If it is in your budget, the Bravo is the best throttle quadrant that you can buy today. And sure, there are many other throttle quadrants that you can buy. I talked about the Thrustmaster Airbus throttle quadrant. I think it's a good product. But if I'm doing multiple types of flying and simming, I'm going for the Bravo. It has everything I want. It has everything I'm going to ever need. And it ties in so much functionality that I can build with it. And I can actually sit my kids down and go through a slew of aircraft in a matter of 30 minutes or less with them about showing them and explaining different functionalities of aircraft and how they fly and characteristics. The Bravo is it. And this is the best thing out there that you can get for the price point and for the overall functionality out there on the market today. So if you guys have questions, comments, leave them down below. If you like the video, like and subscribe, and I hope to have more content for you all here shortly. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy out there, and Happy New Year to you all if you're watching this in 2023. Joe from NDB Aviation, thank you so much again. See you again soon. Bye-bye.